Hi, I'm Alexa. Welcome to my channel. Today we are talking about perfectionism. And I am now a recovering perfectionist. It is something that I have to work on still and continue to hold myself accountable in a less perfectionist way to not be a perfectionist. So the phrase recovering perfectionist and its idea, it's come up a couple times in conversation recently. And so I thought, what better to talk about today than perfectionism? There's a quote by Brené Brown, and it's a bit of a long one. I will drop a link in the description so you can go and read it yourself if you are so inclined. It is as a recovering perfectionist and an aspiring good-enough-ist, I've found it extremely helpful to bust some of the myths about perfectionism so that we can develop a definition that accurately captures what it is and what it does to our lives. Perfectionism is not the same thing as striving to be your best. Perfectionism is not about healthy achievement and growth. Perfectionism is the belief that if we just live perfect, look perfect, and act perfect, we can minimize or avoid the pain of blame, judgment, and shame. It's a shield. The quote goes on, and she has talks, online videos, things like that. I mean, you can go and look her up. I think she has a lot of fantastic stuff out there. What I really like about this is that it clearly defines perfectionism as something other than healthy striving towards goals. And seeing it as a shield was a new way for me to look at it. The fact of the matter is it's a very flimsy, poor shield because you can never be perfect. So you will always have the blame and the shame and the judgment that comes with not being perfect if you are striving to be perfect. So I don't remember exactly when I first heard this one of her quotes. It would have been several years ago at this point. But perfectionism is definitely something that I picked up as a very unhealthy habit as a child going through trauma. I remember, I believe I've mentioned this before, I remember sort of bargaining with God when I was a child that if I was the perfect daughter and I did everything right, my parents would get back together, or my mother wouldn't be mad, she wouldn't flip out, she wouldn't scream at us. And I would always strive to do the things she wanted the way she wanted them done, which is classic for any abuse sufferer, to constantly try and pacify the abuser. And it's impossible because no matter what you do, there's always going to be something that sets them off. So it was a coping mechanism, albeit a very poor one, but it was a coping mechanism. When I got to the point in my life where I could admit that it was not healthy and not actually helping me, that was when I was able to slowly and with a lot of effort change the course of my own path, my own choices, and have since then been on this quest to remind myself that I don't have to be perfect. There's a quote by Sheryl Sandberg, "Done is better than perfect." And in the context that I read it, and the way I've sort of applied it to my life is especially in the working realm in my job. If you are constantly looking for something to be perfect before you hand it in, it could be like schoolwork, it could be a job, like a project at work, it could be something like starting YouTube. If you're always looking for it to be perfect before you put it out into the world, you will never ever put it out in the world. There will always be something additional that you think of that needs to be fixed before you release it. So this done is better than perfect is this concept of at a certain point, you're not going to make it better than it is. You have to release it, let other people, if it's like let's say it's a technology platform or something, you have to release it, let other people use it. And then that feedback will actually be so beneficial in you potentially making upgrades, and you'll be able to see what else you'll come up with ideas, or be given ideas, I should say, that you would never have thought of yourself. And essentially the end product in time will become even better than you could have ever thought of it. So this done is better than perfect motto is something that I remind myself when I'm really stressing over making something as perfect as I can. Especially if I'm on a deadline, like, is this about as good as it's going to get? Recently, I have come across or sort of been introduced to this concept of the MVP, which is not the most valuable player. It is the minimum viable product. So what is the absolute minimum? So this, I learned this in context of a technology, a program being rolled out to all staff. So what was the minimum amount of that program that had to be built for us as staff to use it without causing issues, knowing that as we were using it, additional upgrades could be implemented? And this concept has sort of captured my brain a little bit, in that it's such the opposite of perfectionism, but the benefits of it, if you get it right, when you do actually identify what your minimum viable product is, if you get that identification right, because listen, you could think you don't need something and you do, so you could get it wrong, like it can happen. But if you get it right, you're going to get to the feedback part much faster, and you're going to get to adoption in terms of people using the platform, the network, the service, whatever it is you're rolling out, and the enhancement from the ideas that they get back to. So this minimum viable product idea is something newer for me, but I think it goes hand in hand with this done is better than perfect and this recovering perfectionism, perfectionist sufferer that I am. It's good enough. Let's get it out there, right? So I have a couple of resources, and they will be in the description as always. So one of them is from Psychology Today, and the definition, and this is just one sentence, and it's quite short. Perfectionism is a personality trait characterized by high expectations and standards. Now, some people might think perfectionism is related to OCD. They're not the same. You don't have to have one or both. Like, you don't have to have both if you have one. It can be a symptom of people who suffer from OCD, but it is not necessarily, if you have perfectionist tendencies, it doesn't mean you are OCD. I think a really interesting thing is this fear of judgment or disapproval. So I was also reading, I think this one was Very Well. And I have this link too. Sorry, I had it at the wrong spot. There are 3 types of perfectionism, and they can be high standards for yourself, high standards for others, or perceived high standards of others for you. So I hold myself to incredibly high standards, but I also do that because I fear that other people, I have to be perfect for other people because other people expect it. So I think for me, it would be 2 of them. I'm much more lenient when, like, other people, they don't have to be perfect. Yes, if you're going to be in a certain situation, if you're at work, I think that people should do their best. Now, your best is going to be different every day, but you should always be trying your best, even if your best is I got out of bed today and I'm exhausted and I made a cup of tea, right? Like that's it. That was all I could do today. That still is your best. Great job, right? There's people who definitely don't strive to do their best, and I probably have a little bit more work to do as a recovering perfectionist to understand that point of view. And there are certainly days when this minimal viable product idea is this done is better than perfect, this taking a day off just because you want to, like there's no reason for it. There's no sorry, that's not the right thing. The reason is you want to. There's no reason that is in my mind a justifiable reason, which doesn't actually mean it's a justifiable reason or not. Like if you want a day off and you have days to use, vacation days, PTO, whatever, like they're yours, you earned them, you can use them however you want. In my brain, I have to remind myself that if I want some time off, I can take time off. I don't have to have a reason like I have a doctor's appointment or I'm going somewhere on vacation and I'm using the time for that. Sometimes you can just take time off and stay at home and do nothing and just decompress, right? And that's a good enough reason. It's your choice. It's your time. So as this recovering perfectionist, I definitely still have those moments where I do question why I'm taking time off and if I should, or, I have to be better and I have to do better and I can't let people down. And fighting those voices in my brain is certainly an ongoing thing, but it's a very valuable and very rewarding thing that I've gotten to the point I am. So if you're further behind in a journey of becoming a recovering perfectionist, I certainly encourage you to try and continue the journey towards being a good-enough-ist, just like I am. I'm also going to drop a link to an article on Fortune Well, and this has 4 ways, strategies they call them, for you to kind of get over perfectionism. So the first one, I don't exactly know how to say this word, and I had to look it up. It says develop an aphorism. And so an aphorism, if I'm saying that correctly, is a catchy phrase or statement, a fact, I think is what it was, but like a catchy phrase. I'm totally blanking on the one that was the example that was given. But essentially, done is better than perfect is a phrase. And you can say that to yourself over and over again until you start believing it, right? Like that's the kind of thing. It's a little catchy phrase that you can do it. So the author here has one that they used, and they said to themselves, remember, you're making the best decision you can with the information you have at the time. I've actually used a similar phrase with myself when I've been sort of mentally beating myself up for decisions I made in the past. I couldn't have made better decisions. I didn't have the information I have today. I actually genuinely made the best decision I could at the time with the resources, the knowledge, the data, the life that I had at the time. I made the best decisions I could. Like, you can't beat yourself up if you did your best. So reminding yourself of these little things, getting a little catchphrase that resonates with you, and really like using that when you hear your brain giving you some negative self-talk. It's very powerful to catch yourself when you hear that negative and say, no, done is better than perfect. This is good enough. This is done. This is what we need today. And if we need to make it better in the future, we can adjust it. It doesn't mean this is it forever. This is good enough for today. So the second thing is to try something new. So putting yourself into new situations is a way to sort of force yourself to be the beginner, to fail a little bit. It did take me quite a long time to actually post my first YouTube video, but the longer that I have now been on YouTube, it is becoming easier and easier. And I'm finding myself, I looked back at one of my first videos. I was trying to find something for a short in it. And I could see how different I look on my newer videos versus my first few, where I was so nervous and uncomfortable and really didn't know what I was doing, knew what I wanted to do. And I was a beginner, and I'm still a novice. I still have so much I can learn, and I'm sort of enjoying the little bits of knowledge that I'm gathering, and that almost breath of fresh air that I have given myself to try things in the past several years. I mean, I tried gardening. That's something I've tried. I've tried a bunch of new things, and being able to do that and to just sort of laugh. And I really do set myself up ahead of time saying, I'm going to be terrible at this. Like, I'm not going to be good at it. That's totally okay. Stuff's going to go wrong. I will learn from it. I'll laugh at myself, make a joke. It's all going to be fine. And I really have to talk myself up that way, but it's so much more easy I don't have to consciously do that anymore. I'm starting to do that naturally and sort of on autopilot, which is a very nice change from the past, when I would not even try stuff out of fear of not being perfect and good enough. So the third tip that they have is to recognize your strengths. I think we have all probably looked up how to answer interview questions, and I'm relating it to this because in every single interview I have ever been in, I've basically had that question that's, what are you good at? What are your strengths? Right? And in my earlier career, when I was very first starting out, I really didn't know what to say. And it's taken a long time. And my promise to myself is that I will always look at the facts. Is this true? Is this a provable fact by data? So the facts show that I am extremely detail oriented. I am very able to understand and grasp the big picture and connect the dots, rationalize things, relate things to other departments, to remember information I have heard in the past and bring that in, make a connection where two systems have never been used together and say, whoa, wait a minute, wouldn't these work together if we used this? I have a knack for helping others in probably not everyone. I'm not everyone's cup of tea, but I do have a knack for helping others find what works for them. I have a knack of, and I have issues sometimes, but I have a knack with communication. I do have a strength in communication. I've always been good at writing. I've always been good at stories. I've always been good at, I can't believe I just said that, because my sister is an incredible verbal storyteller, and I always hold myself up to her standards. Well, I don't know if they're her standards, but my standards based on her. And I always feel like I'm not that good. But in reality, I have always had a knack for telling stories and being able to present information and in a way that other people can understand. I recently brought this thing, like, if you can't teach it to a 2-year-old, you don't know the subject. I brought that up a few times this past week, and it's very apt here. So when you start actually looking at your strengths and provable, I have done XYZ on these projects in the past year, and each of these, this meant I was analyzing data. This meant that I was thinking logically. This meant that I was able to adapt and adjust course when the data was showing different results than I expected. I have been able to help, coworkers in this way. I have been able to do this, that, and the other. When you start looking at the things you have done and then the skills you have needed to accomplish those things, you'll be able to come up with provable facts of what your strengths are. And I think for me, being able to look at it in that way, that I can tell you things that I have accomplished in my career journey. And each one of those ties back to a strength of mine and what allowed me to be successful. That was the strategy that I took to find my strengths and be able to talk about them. You have to find the way that works for you, but you have to be honest with yourself. You can't over exaggerate either way. You have to be just clear. And I think it's a very interesting thing when you're used to talking down about yourself to yourself, to catch yourself saying something negative, like, this is the silliest thing, because I'm literally on a YouTube video right now. I am presenting at a conference. I'm presenting at a few in the coming months, but I was thinking about it and I was like, oh, but I'm not a good public speaker. And then I was like, but that's not true. Look at what you've been doing for the past 6 months. Look at when you have been at conferences. Look at webinars that I've attended where they're not super engaging, and there's webinars where they are really engaging. When I look at YouTube videos with really engaging, not engaging, and I find that I have something in the middle, and it, again, not everyone's cup of tea, that's totally fine, but I do have a knack for something. And so being able to catch that thought as I thought it, saying that I wasn't good enough, I'm not a good presenter, and say, yeah, no, that's not true. Here's the data and the facts that show you can do this. It's a really novel thing when you are naturally more inclined. It's like the pendulum has just kind of swung to the positive side, and it used to be all negative, and now I'm more naturally inclined to think the positive things. And it's been a fight and it's a struggle, but it's worth it. The fourth thing that they say is to celebrate your progress. So I love lists, and this is a really silly example, but I will have to-do lists, and I will actually put things on my to-do list, even if I've just finished them, just so I can cross them off and feel accomplished. Because sometimes you need to do that. One of the things that I've had a little bit of trouble with recently with my to-do list at work is that the items on it are really big projects or really long-term things, and they're not going to be crossed off right away. And so I'm looking at this list and I'm not getting anything crossed off. And that makes me feel gross. I'm like, I'm not getting anything done. I'm not doing anything. What I realized was there are all of these steps that I'm taking that are adding up to this end result. And I wasn't tracking those as closely as I can and should, and really celebrating those little things along the way that are allowing me to eventually cross off these projects from my list. In YouTube, I mean, getting to 40 videos was sort of mind-blowing to me. My 50th, I celebrated by doing my first live, which was so far out of my comfort zone. It was a lot. Now I'm on number 56, not including shorts. I'm not numbering those. This is wild. This is wild to me. And just celebrating those little wins along the way has been fun. And it's also like, oh, I got this many done. I wonder if I can do another 50. I wonder if in a year. So I started in February of this year. So by February, my 1-year anniversary, how many videos will I have up? It should be roughly 100. I think I've missed at least 2. So 52 weeks to a week would be 104. It's not going to be that. It's going to be somewhere around 100. That's kind of exciting. Now, when I very first started, I was like, well, let's just do 5. Okay, you've done 5. Can you do 10? You've done 10. Now I'm not really thinking about a few at a time. I'm really more thinking, I've done 50. I can do another 50. But you have to start with those little things at the beginning, and you have to be willing to give yourself credit for them. Okay, this one is a longer video. I feel like I've done some shorter ones, so I'm glad I had a topic today that I could talk about and really relate back to in my own life. And it's a super good reminder for me when I do get down on myself, when I haven't done things as perfectly as I could have, whether that be communication, whether it be a project, whether it be a video. I've done a lot, and done is better than perfect. And it's all good, right? It's all good. If you've made it this far, thank you. Maybe drop a like, subscribe, leave me a comment, share the video. And I will see you on the next one. Be kind to yourself.